Tashdile and welcome to Tibet This Week. This is Sakina Bhatt with another edition of Weekly News on Tibet, His Holiness the Dalai Lama and Central Tibetan Administration. Let's look at the headlines first. We risk never going to China again, says German Parliamentary Delegation to His Holiness the Dalai Lama. His Holiness the Dalai Lama briefs a group from Denmark on Buddhism. Representatives of 5 groups offer long life prayers for His Holiness the Dalai Lama. His Holiness the Dalai Lama hails Tibetan medicine as a unique service to mankind. President Dr Sangay opens annual workshop on Tibetan Medicare System. 4 UN member states raise concerns on situation in Tibet at 42nd United Nations Human Rights Council session. China bans even retired elderly Tibetans from performing religious activities in Tibet. A 3-member German Parliamentary Delegation called on the Tibetan spiritual leader, His Holiness the Dalai Lama, at the latter's residence on Wednesday this week. The delegation was led by members of German Parliament, Frank Henrich, Ms. Ute Wog, and Ms. Margareta Baus.
The Chinese now over 70 years, this is their policy regarding Tibet. Now they themselves realize failure. So they should follow the method regarding Tibetan issue, should be more realistic approach.
When we hear you, we feel a bit represented. We are here to compliment and to see what voice we can be from your side. We risk even never to go to China again, because they would not let us in because we talk to you or talk to your president and the exile government.
How did the meeting with His Holiness go this morning?
We were surprised, we were invited, and it was very good. And we learned, I think I can speak for all of us, that happiness is not just a thing to be said and thought, but to live, to be lived. So that's just one thing that comes to my mind. It was very good, it was political, spiritual, personal, so we were very grateful.
The delegation also met with CTA President Dr Lobsang during a meeting at the Kasha Secretariat. President Dr Sangay urged the delegates to bring the issue of Tibet on the front line whenever possible and also to further advocate the Tibetan cause at the helm of German Parliament. The delegation engaged in a series of meetings throughout the day. They also met with the Speaker of Tibetan Parliament in Exile, Mr. Pema Chungne.
It was a very impressive meeting with the cabinet and with the president, of course. And what I'm taking with me is in our meetings and dialogues with China to put the human rights issue on the top and speak in the public about human rights, not only bilateral. China does only have respect to us if we respect our values. So it's so important to respect our values, and one of the most important values is, of course, human rights.
So I think the most important thing is that we tell China to go the middle way, to start to cooperate, to get a better life for the people in Tibet. And before this visit, I didn't thought that the life in Tibet is so strongly restricted for the people there. I thought they live there, they are a little in pressure, but I didn't know that it was so hard for them and they are so unfree. So I think it's necessary to tell them, the Chinese government, also public, that they have to cooperate and they have to start to speak, because we find partners very open-minded to speak and not wanted only to go their own way, but to find a middle way between the Tibetan people and China. It's the most important thing.
His Holiness the Dalai Lama met a group from Denmark and accorded them a brief explanation on Buddhism at his residence on Wednesday last week.
To Buddhist, it is of course Buddha, Shakyamuni. One aspect, according to his teaching, one great Indian nuclear physicist, Kasa Rajaramana, late Rajaramana, she once told me quantum physics in the West, something new. In this country, in India, over 2,000 years, quantum physics already developed. He told me, it is true. And he mentioned few sentences of Madhyamika Mulakarika, wrote by Nagarjuna. So, this person, one way, great thinker, great philosopher. And then he always says his follower should not accept his teaching out of faith, as I mentioned earlier, but rather thorough investigation and experiment. So from that viewpoint, this person, 2,500 years ago, his thinking is very scientific. Experiment. Not faith.
No.
So I also used to consider this person ancient Indian scientist. Okay.
Organized by 5 groups, a long life prayer offering for His Holiness the Dalai Lama was held at the main temple in Dharamshala on Friday last week. The Tenshuk was offered by Chang Gaden Chokor Ling Monastery, Federation of Tibetan Cooperatives, Dökam Chushigandruk, based in Delhi, Tibetan residents in Bhutan and members of Kham Gonjo. His Holiness noted that those who are offering long life prayer essentially represent the aspiration and hope of Tibetans around the world. His Holiness the Dalai Lama spoke about the importance and benefits of Tibetan medicine practices during a meeting with executive members of Central Council of Tibetan Medicine on Monday this week. His Holiness noted the immense contribution of the Tibetan medicine in promoting holistic health and healing.
Mingdi Pemesa Sigurota, Tibetan Medicine System. Saturday in the Zane, Pug, Sandole, and Paya, Pug, Sorge was Zane, she Pug, Sandole Payash. This order, she Janaga member today, as a George on the Sata at the Jetty, Marbe, Tunes and the Sigo, the game, no chance. And Gal Vedic Tane, Joy to Ready Kantangas, Mingdi, Page Sorry Boston, as a Ming Kid War, Sati as a Kelsar. So, the big Casmotor. Any Jar, Ayurvedic, at the most Jan or Ayurvedic Cavity or last, and the Niam Dole, Jikuturu Mans Chas or Yampasu Chick, as well. Lecture, Lobby Chas on Chuna.
The Department of Health Central Tibetan Administration inaugurated a 3-day workshop on awareness and enrollment planning of Tibetan Medicare System to the directors and staffs of various Tibetan health centers across India at the Administrative Training and Welfare Society in Dharamshala on Monday this week. The annual workshop is being attended by 44 directors and staff from 33 Tibetan settlements in India. Chief guest at the inaugural ceremony was President Dr Lobsang of Central Tibetan Administration. Dr Sangay explained the evolution of the Tibetan Medicare System since it was first discussed in the Tibetan Parliament in 2007 and how it came about to its present status. Health Kalun Chokyong Wangchuk said that the 3-day workshop on awareness and enrollment planning of Tibetan Medicare System will give an understanding of what measures should be taken to have Tibetan Medicare System awareness and enrollment campaign program more effective and efficient in future from every settlement level. According to the Health Information System from 2012 to today, Tibetan settlements across India have received 10,390 Medicare services, 1,086 Tibetan Medicare System members have received Rs 96 lakh medical support from 1st April to 10th September 2019, and Tibetan Medicare System has gained the overall enrollment of 27,496 in 2019. The Tibetan Medicare System is a social health insurance program of the Department of Health seeking to improve public health and well-being of the Tibetan community in exile. The 3-day workshop will conclude on 18 September 2019. The United Nations Human Rights Council was urged to express concern and request information about disappeared Tibetans, in particular the 11th Panchen Lama, Genden Chukinima. In a statement delivered on behalf of the Helsinki Foundation for Human Rights at the ongoing 42nd regular session of the UN Human Rights Council in Geneva on 11th September, Kai Müller, Executive Director, International Campaign for Tibet, Germany, drew the Council's attention to China's ongoing widespread practice of arbitrary detention and enforced disappearance.
A delegation of Tibetans consisting of DIR Secretary, then the head of the UN Human Rights Desk, and then Office of Tibet Human Rights Officer. We went to Geneva before the UN Human Rights Commission's 42nd conference, and we went there to lobby with the permanent missions of the United Nations based in Geneva, and we met about 12 permanent mission members, telling them about the grim human rights situation in Tibet, especially the present Yajingar problem. We were also able to meet some of the rapporteurs of the UN Human Rights Commission, and then also we also were able to bring the grim human rights situation to the EU Human Rights Committee, where they invited NGOs to express the dire human rights violations in different parts of the world. That was basically to lobby and then request the permanent missions to make statements or ask questions during the UN Human Rights Commission. And then also we were able to meet many members of the permanent missions in different capacities, and also we organized a side event on the human rights issue in Tibet, and many permanent mission members, NGOs and others, they came to this session. Chinese NGOs also came and they asked questions on Yajingar, and also they spoke about the issue of Tibet, and they were also trying to say that His Holiness Dalai Lama and Tibetans were separatists and all that sort of thing, that we were able to respond to them. One important thing during this lobby is that we not only met the permanent mission representatives, but also tried to find out how the UN Human Rights Commission meets, and how different NGOs, different governments and NGOs, they speak about the human rights issue.
Concerns were raised over the Chinese government development projects in Tibet, including the wide-scale demolition and eviction of Tibetan Buddhist centers. The UN Council members were called upon to access those so-called development projects undertaken by Chinese authorities, as they threaten and violate the social, economic and cultural rights of the Tibetans. Tibetan representatives voiced concern over the ongoing violations of Tibetan religious rights and its interference over the Tibetan Buddhist reincarnation system in particular.
Thank you. I give the floor to the representative of Society for Threatened People. You have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. We would like to draw Council's attention on concerning reports of continued political repression, cultural assimilation, social discrimination, economic marginalization, and environmental destruction in Tibetan areas in People's Republic of China. Mr. Vice President, Tibetans are restricted from undertaking Buddhist cultural life. Just last week, Human Rights Watch obtained an official notice banning all retired Tibetan officials from performing Kora, a Tibetan spiritual practice of circumambulating a sacred site while reciting prayers. In other reports, Chinese authorities in Lhasa Middle School, Chamto, and Hoka Chetang City prohibited Tibetan students from partaking in any religious festivities, particularly during Sakatawa, the holiest Tibetan Buddhist month. Tibetan parents were also made to sign an agreement pledging they will not allow their children to take part in religious events during school breaks. The Chinese official Iranian's move in diluting centuries-old Tibetan Buddhist practices of reincarnation system by meddling in the practice to meet its political goal is extremely concerning, and this requires Council's attention. Mr. Vice President, the imprisoned Tibetan language rights advocate Tashi Wangchuk's lawyer was yet again denied to access him earlier this year. Finally, we urge the Council to encourage People's Republic of China to resume meaningful dialogue with a representative of the Dalai Lama on the basis of middle way approach. I thank you, Mr. Vice President.
Reiterating EU's concern expressed in the last session, the EU yet again called China to respect human rights, especially in Tibet and Xinjiang. The delegate of Czech Republic said that Czech Republic regret to reiterate their call on immediate release of human rights defenders, including Tashi Wangchuk. Germany raised concern over China's unlawful mass detentions, torture, and massive infringements of civic, political, and religious rights in Xinjiang and Tibet, and called China to these must end immediately. Furthermore, Sweden called China to respect the rights of peaceful assembly to manifest religion and culture, in particular for persons belonging to ethnic minorities in Xinjiang and Tibet, and to allow meaningful access for independent observers. Aligning with EU statement, France said human rights situation remains grave concern, particularly in Tibet and Xinjiang. France called on China to end all detention camps. China stoops another level in carrying out religious persecution of Tibetans. According to the latest report published by Human Rights Watch, an international NGO which conducts research and advocacy of human rights, the Chinese Communist Party has issued a notice banning retired elderly Tibetans from performing circumambulation in monasteries and other religious observances. It further instructs all city and prefecture old cadre bureaus and all regional work unit and government personnel departments in the Tibet Autonomous Region to submit a written personnel name list and suggestions for sanctions before 18th August. Religious persecution of Tibetans has been an ongoing policy of China in Tibet. Tibetans from every walk of life are suffering. If caught, they and their family members get arrested and they will be subjected to sanctions and disciplinary actions. Now even the retired elderly Tibetans are forced to forsake all religious activities with no means of seeking spiritual refuge and comfort in the twilight years. So much for this week. See you next time and have a great weekend.